Hi, my darlings. I'm Sophie Darling, and welcome back to the channel. If you love anime, heartfelt reactions, and deep dives into symbolism and themes, then you're in the right place. Before we jump into today's reaction, don't forget to hit that like button to show some love, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a moment of fun. And if you want even more exclusive content like early access to my reactions, full-length anime watch-alongs, and an amazing community of fellow anime lovers, please do check out my Patreon. You can find a link in the description box below. Your support truly means the world as it helps to keep these reactions coming, and I'd love to have you join our cozy little anime family. Today, we are reacting to episode 15 of series 4 of Attack on Titan, and we're at the halfway point now to the end of series 4, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself once this series ends because I have thoroughly enjoyed every single minute I have spent watching Attack on Titan, and I don't know what I'm going to do when it's done. And I think it's going to hit me incredibly hard to have such an amazing series come to an end. I'm probably going to be empty for like a couple of weeks. I also need to make sure that I don't compare whatever I watch next to Attack on Titan because that would be unfair, but at the same time, easily done because this is a masterpiece. Every single minute I have spent watching this has been phenomenal. I actually have no critiques so far in terms of storytelling, in terms of character development, in terms of direction. If Historia does end up being pregnant, because again, I'm still running with the belief that she's not pregnant and that it's an act. If she does end up being pregnant, that may be my first critique of Attack on Titan, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I just feel it devalues her as a character. And that's not me to say that motherhood is not something that women should aspire to, or that motherhood should be something that is looked down upon. I mean, in terms of her character development and her character arc, it feels very redundant to thrust Historia back into a cycle that she has spent so long escaping from. And I feel that would be dragging her character backwards rather than forwards and would undo the hard-pressed work for her to unlearn that trauma. And I feel like that would be dragging her character progression backwards rather than pushing it forwards. Unless there is a very good, sound justification for how it will work with her as a character, I'm not overly happy at the idea that she is actually pregnant, and I feel as if that is going to reduce her to nothing more than being a mother, rather than the fact that she was a soldier, that she is a queen, that she is a figure that has fought against family trauma, that has tried to undo this narrative of her being worthless, of her not being good enough, that she's fought to break this family cycle of having children for the sake of protecting the family line, but also protecting the founding titan. And yes, of course, she is not a titan. She's not taking the founding titan, but this idea that she has to have a child in order to protect herself, in order to stop herself from being used, almost feels as if she's falling back into that replicated cycle that she strove to break away from. It feels like it's taking Historia as a strong, independent character and then reducing her back into this position of weakness and inferiority. And again, that's not connected with motherhood and pregnancy. That's connected with everything that we have seen from Historia in Series 3. So the idea that you're going to kind of ignore everything from Series 3, all the hard-pressed work to get her to where she is today, to then push her back into a situation where she's pregnant for the sake of saving herself, feels kind of redundant as a character narrative, as a character development. So I'm not overly happy at that. Again, I don't want anyone to be confusing this as saying that you can't be badass and pregnant. Of course you can. That you can't be strong and pregnant. Of course you can. That you can't be a strong, independent woman as a mother. Of course you can. But in terms of Historia's character trajectory, pregnancy is not something that I would have thought would have been thrust upon her, that they would have reduced her to that role We also haven't seen a lot of her in series 4, and that's also one of my critiques is that, yes, we had quite a bit of her in series 3 in terms of her importance, but we're not seeing a lot of her in series 4. She's kind of been relegated to the sidelines. She's kind of been pushed out of the spotlight somewhat. And she's a fundamental character in the show. She's a fundamental core aspect of the series. So I understand that, again, she's queen. She can't be on the front lines as a soldier. I completely get that. Trust me, I do. But I just feel like there's more that they could do with her that they're not doing, that there's more they could show of her that they're not doing, that they're kind of overlooking her and pushing her to the side to focus on other aspects of the story, which is, fair enough. But at the same time, I don't like the fact that they just spring this idea of a pregnancy on us and then we never really see her again. And we only see mention of her. Like, we have to protect the queen. Erin's going to go for the queen. Oh, she's pregnant. And this could be why she's pregnant. You know what I mean? It feels like she's just been relegated to the sidelines. And considering how central she was in series 1, 2, and 3, it's a rapid departure. And I'm not quite happy with that treatment of Historia because at the same time, every other character is getting their moment to shine and Historia is being pushed and hidden away rather than actually having a story line other than being pregnant. And I think that's probably where one of my critiques is going to come from. Fair enough if there was an actual justifiable reason for her being pregnant, other than trapping her back into that family cycle. Again, if there was more explanation, more information given, I could maybe support that storyline arc. But because it's just thrown on us and then she's thrown back into the sidelines, I kind of can't support that as a story trajectory because it just seems like they didn't know what to do with her. So they were like, okay, so Historia's going to be pregnant for X, Y, and Z reason, but then we're going to push her to the sidelines and we're not actually going to really delve into that any further. Of course, so what they're saying is that she did it because she fell in love with somebody and that's why she's had a baby with them. But the other aspect of it seems as if she's done it for self-preservation, self-protection, which is fair enough if we actually saw how that plays out rather than it just being like, oh yeah, Historia's pregnant and we're not really going to show you any more of Historia. Again, we're halfway through the series. That could change. I don't think it will. So I guess in terms of critique is that if Historia's actually pregnant and it's not like a fake baby, then that would probably be my first critique of Attack on Titan, which is pretty good because we're in series 4. So for me to only critique one thing into series 4, it's pretty phenomenal. But I don't like the idea of that being her story trajectory. I think it just undermines and takes away from her. And again, it's nothing to do with pregnancy and it's nothing to do with motherhood. Those can be written extremely well if given context and if shown. To have it thrust upon the viewer and for us to try and put the dots together ourselves rather than actually showing or explaining or even giving us more of Historia's experience in order to understand what's going on, that's when I have an issue with it because again, it just seems very much like we didn't know what to do with her, so as a female character, we're going to make her pregnant. I don't like that. It's such an overdone trope where they don't know what to do with a woman character. So then they go, oh, well, put in a surprise pregnancy because it's such a shock and it's a twist. And it's like, come on, can you not think of something more creative, something more innovative than pregnancy? And again, nothing against pregnancy as a theme, nothing against motherhood as a theme. You can be strong, independent, and be pregnant and be a mother. I just don't like the way that it's been done, and I don't like the way that it's Historia that it's being done too, especially when there's been so much focus on her breaking the cycles of generational trauma, breaking away from what her family did, and then now to force her to have a child for self-preservation seems very against who Historia is as a person. She wouldn't want to bring a child into that cycle. Why would she force a child to go through a similar trauma of not being wanted that she had to go through with her mother? Because she's not happy. You can see that she's not happy. So why would she do that to her child? And again, it could be a critique on sacrifice. It could be a critique on the fact that nobody has a happy ending. I just personally think they could have done it better, especially in relation to Historia. So if that turns out to be true, that's probably going to be my first critique ever of Attack on Titan. And I'm going to be incredibly sad if it is a real pregnancy, because it just takes away from everything that Historia's done over the past couple of seasons, all the work that she's done to unlearn generational trauma and to be the person that she is today is just wiped away for no particular reason, especially because we're not being shown a lot of Historia this season. Again, she feels very much sidelined, as if they didn't know what to do with her, so they're not bringing her into the main storyline. So they take her out of the action by being pregnant because they don't actually know what to do with her, which is common in storytelling. I just hate it, especially because it's always a woman and it's always fucking pregnancy. And it's just like, okay, can we not just like write them out of the story in a more creative way other than, oh, they're having a baby? You know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to do it. Women are people too. Yes, we can carry babies and we can have babies, but we are people as well. It doesn't have to be a pregnancy that takes us out of the action, you know? But I've gone on a tangent now. So we're going to get into episode 15. I don't want to talk for any longer than that because we kind of left on a cliffhanger with Levi taking Zeke somewhere, also preventing him from transforming, because if he transforms, he's going to have that thunder spear rammed straight into him because it's sticking out of his body. There was also that weird little flashback towards the end where Zeke is talking about how he can't play baseball because he's on a mission, which I think again is hinting to the fact that Zeke has had memories. Zeke has known all along the part that he needs to play in this grand scheme of ensuring that humanity survives. I don't know how the next couple of episodes are going to play out because everything is getting very intense and very nerve-wracking. And I don't want to talk for much longer because I genuinely do want to see what happens in episode 15. And we also had the hint that more people could be transformed because of Zeke's scream, because they've consumed the spinal fluid in the wine. And Pizzi's had that twinge, and also Falco. So now I'm thinking, could Falco, because the only other person that could be consumed potentially by Falco is Zeke. So could Falco consume Zeke? But then that wouldn't work in terms of the rumbling unless Falco consumes Zeke after the rumbling's already been triggered by Zeke and Eren, and then Zeke is ready to let go and Falco consumes him to be able to have that power, because that power was supposed to go to Colt, his brother. So if Colt's not here and Zeke is in a predicament where that power needs to be transferred, the only logical person that could really take that is Falco, because Falco's not going to be written out of this. I think Falco is too much importance right now for them to just go, no, we're going to get rid of him. We're not going to include him in the future. So now I'm wondering if potentially Falco could end up consuming Zeke and becoming the Beast Titan. But without further ado, we're going to get into episode 15.
よく見ておけ、ジーク。これが私たちの住むレベリオ区だ。世界と比べれば鳥かごみたいに小さい。私たちはここからどこにも行けずに死ぬまでここで暮らさなきゃいけない。ジーク、お前はここから出たいと思わないか？
うん、出たい。
おや、珍しい。こんな朝早くにお客さんかい。また出直したしや。ああ、エルディア人か。
What the fuck, man?
私たちは外出許可を取っているのですよ。
殺戮の限りを尽くした悪魔の末裔がまたガキ作って繁殖しやがって。
But they didn't personally do it. Poor kids.
よく覚えておけよ、ジーク。これが外の世界だ。
This is what we need to
世界が嫌
end.
なら変えなければならない。ジーク、
Poor Zeke.
お前がみんなを救うんだ。
We're gonna get Zeke's backstory, aren't we? And I'm gonna cry because I nearly cried last time, and I feel like I'm gonna cry this time because we got like a 2-second flashback and I was already in tears. So I have a feeling I'm now going to be in tears this episode if this is about Zeke and how he goes on to become the leader essentially of the Aldean resistance in Malay. I'm not going to be able to emotionally handle it, I don't think. especially after everything that Zeke has done. The fact that I'm gonna sit here and still cry for him is borderline insane, but the show is really good at doing that. It's a bit like with Kenny. Like, I don't think I would ever cry over Kenny, and then I started bawling when Kenny died. He did what he could to try and protect Levi, and yes, he wasn't the best person, but still, he was dying for something. He believed in something, and he was Levi's only surviving relative, and then he loses him. It's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. So now I feel like they're going to show us Zeke's backstory, and it's going to be even more heart-wrenching and even more devastating, especially because Grisha is saying to Zeke, remember this well. Do you want to live outside the walls? Well, this is what happens when you live outside the walls. It's just so sad. It's already so sad. Oh, we're going this far back. His candidate training.
ええ、一人選ばれます。他の子はみんな幼くも必死に名誉マーレ人の称号を得ようと努めているのに、奴にはその気概がどうも見受けられない。全く何をしにここにいるのよ。
That's who he inherits it from.
訓練はどうだ、ジーク。
Wait. He wears glasses because the person he's inherited the Titan from wears glasses. Because he can't see very well. So when Zeke inherits, Zeke probably also inherits the trait of not being able to see very well. So then he has to wear the glasses. No! What the fuck, man? What is this series? I can't with this.
これ大変。
そうか。でも
So he was
お前なら
already
き
a
っと戦士にな
candidate
れる。
before he
あ
turned
な
his
たには
parents
特別な
in.
力があるんだからね。
何よりお父さんとお母さんの子なんだからな。
今日はジークの好物のパイを焼いたよ。
Zeke.
社交ダンスクラブなんてジークは寂しがっているぞ。
でも僕はレベリオの健康を守りたいんだ。
これが1200年前に起きたラーゴの
Oh,
惨
he's
劇。
teaching him the
大
same
都市
way
ラ
he
ーゴは
taught
この日の
Grisha.
うちに消滅し、何十万ものマーレ人がエルディア帝国に殺された。
わかった。人がいっぱい死んだんでしょ。
ジークは戦士になってマーレのために戦いたいのか。
No, probably not.
僕は戦士になりたい。
Zeke, bless him, probably always does what he thinks is best for other people rather than what's best for himself.
やった。
It's so tragic though, seeing how loved he was.
味
Oh, bless him. He's trying.
下手くそだな、父さんは。お父さん、
ジークか。
今日は早く終わったんだ。だから。
おお、そうか。じゃあたくさん
He
勉強で
just
きる
wants
な。
to play with his dad.
うん。
モンテの3階もバレの3課も
He never
全
got
て
to
マ
be a
ーレに都合
kid.
のいい作り話に過ぎない。古代よりエルディア人にそのような残虐な文化や風習はなく、何より
始祖ユミル様がそのようなことを望まないのでありえない。
その通りだ。分かってきたな、ジーク。
お前のようなエルディア人に我が国の巨人を委ねられるわけがないだろう。
I can't already. Oh, between his grandfather drumming it into him that they have to atone for the sins of the past, to Grisha never spending time with him as a father beyond studying because he's the sole savior of the Oldian people of the Oldian Empire. Poor kid just wanted to be a kid. Just wanted to spend time with his dad. Poor kid just wanted to be loved. He just wanted to spend time with his family. He just wanted to be a normal kid. And he's never had that opportunity. Between being seen as the savior to being seen as a candidate to fight for Malay to being seen as someone that has to atone for the sins of the past, he's never had the chance to be Zeke, to be himself. Fuck, we're like 6 minutes in and I'm already like emotionally devastated. I should have brought some tissues in because this is insane, but poor Zeke. Again, it's the way that they take a character that you have been rooting for their downfall and make it so that their backstory is the most emotionally crushing and sort of gives justification as to why they are the person that they are today. It's because he's never been allowed to be himself, to be a kid. He's always been treated as the sole savior, the hope for Aldia, the hope for the Aldian Empire, the one that's going to bring about the hope for the Aldian people. So to see him marveling at the way that other kids get to play with their dads and he never gets that, it's heart-wrenching. It really is. Poor Zeke.
おい魚君そのボール投げてくれないか
And this is how they start playing baseball
Oh.
together because we saw that in the
まだ
last
小さいの
episode.
にやるじゃないかほらあナイスキャッチ
Is probably the
食べ
only
相手も飽
person
きた
that
ところだ
treats him like a
ちょっと
child.
おじさんに
And
付
this
き合
is
っ
the
てくれない
person
か
that he's gotta
赤い腕章
consume in order to
君
become a
たちが目指
titan.
すマーレの戦士だトム・クサバー本業は巨人学の研究者だほら君の名前は
ジーク・イエーガーです
おおジークどうも君は筋がいいなきっとピッチャーに向いてるぞ
ただいまお父さん今日ね
どうなってるんだグライス。ジークを戦士にできなければ計画は失敗だぞ。
だがフクロウが言うには巨人の継承者選びに介入するにはジーク自身が好成績を残さないと。
ああ、そうだとも。ジークなら
ごめんなさい
ジーク、お前ならできる。父さんと母さんの子供なんだからな。
It's too much
お
pressure.
前はマーレに必要ないと言ったはずだが、なぜここにいる？
マーレへの忠誠を示しエルディアの罪を償うためです
Everything he's done is because Grisha's forced him to do it. He just wants to make his parents proud. He just wants to make them happy. At the cost of his own sanity. How could you do that to him? Grisha, you're a horrible dad.
この間散々だったな
Oh. I have to keep pausing to catch my breath. I think out of every episode I've watched, this is probably the most heart-wrenching one for me personally. Just seeing Zeke wanting to make his father proud, wanting him to respect him and love him, and he can't even be a father to him. He just sees him as a weapon, as something to be used. And we kind of got the hint of that. I believe I said that towards the end of series 3, is that I felt there was more to Zeke's reasoning for turning in Grisha than just loyalty to Marley, that it had to be to do with not being seen and treated as a child, but being used as a weapon, as a means to get ahead for Grisha's own ambition, rather than being treated and loved as a son. He's not being seen as a child, he's being seen as something that Grisha can manipulate and use for his own ambitions, and it's just absolutely disgusting because he's trying his best, he's doing what he can. And to be treated this way is absolutely foul. Like, Grisha is the worst because he is just the worst father. Grisha, when I get my hands on you, boy, when I get my hands on you, because the only person that's treating him like a child is this guy here and also his grandma. Because even his granddad is too busy lecturing him to actually spend time with him and have fun with him. His grandma is the one that's baking him his favorite treats, is reading him his favorite book. They're playing baseball together. They're treating him like an actual person, as someone of worth and value, whereas Grisha doesn't value him at all. Grisha just sees him as worthless, as not being good enough because he can't even become a top candidate. He can't become a warrior if he's not a top candidate. And I still think that Grisha was turned in because Zeke knew it was something he had to do in order to ensure that humanity is safe in the future. That Zeke has either had memories saying that that's what he needs to do, or Grisha has had memories saying that's what needs to be done and has told Zeke that's what he needs to do, or both of them have had memories and they're working together on this. But either way, I'm kind of glad Grisha got turned in because he's fucking doing my head in right now. He's foul. He's horrible.
そんなに戦士になりたいようには見えなかったがな。
ならなきゃいけないんだ。なのに全然ダメだった。
マーレのために寿命を縮め他国を侵略するなんてバカらしくてやってられないよな。
サバーさんはなんで戦士に？
巨人の謎を知りたかったからさ。
He
私は
wanted
研
to
究者
learn
だ
all
か
the
らね。
information that he could.
すべては始祖ユミルが何かと接触したことから始まるらしいが、私はその時に起きたことを知りたいのさ。寿命を縮めてでも巨人の記憶を探ろうと思うほど。
But Zeke is still a kid, so I can understand where he's coming from. He has his whole life ahead of him.
だが巨人の神秘の前に憎しみや争いもくだらないよ。だから
Almost like
こ
Kanji.
の戦争ごっこに付き合ってられない
Like a
私
Malian
たち
version
は
of
似た
Kanji.
者同士で、この世界じゃ珍しいまともな者同士なのさ。
これでよかったんだ。ずっと収容区から出られなくたって生きてさえいれば。
ついに尻尾を掴んだぞ。エルディア付近派とか名乗ってやがるらしい。時間の問題だな。
ジーク、どうしたの？
Does he tell his parents?
お腹がちょっと。
Grisha, when I get my hands on you.
もう危ないことはしないで。見つかったらみんな楽園送りなんだよ。
お前は今まで父さんから何を学んだんだ。誰かが立ち上がらない限り、みんなずっとこの狭い壁の中で惨めに死んでいくんだぞ。
そうよ。これはあなたやエルディア人みんなの未来のための戦いだって言ったでしょ。
That's just Eren.
そのためなら僕はフェイおばさんみたいになってもいいの。
ジーク！もう誰もフェイのような目に合わせないためには戦わなくてはいけない。
But at the cost of
強い
your
エ
own
ルディアを
son's
マーレ
life.
から取り返し、当たり前の権利を勝ち取るんだ。
Oh, Zeke. At the cost of your own son and his sanity, because he doesn't want to do this. This is so hard. Poor Zeke. All he ever wants to be is just a kid. He just wants to be loved and treated like a kid, like every other kid has. And he just wants to protect his parents. He doesn't want his parents to be turned into titans. He doesn't see the bigger picture because, again, he's a kid. How can he see the bigger picture? He just wants his parents to be safe. He just wants them to be alive, which is completely understandable. What kid wouldn't want that? It's just really heart-wrenching. It's just such a heart-wrenching episode because we know what comes to fruition, but that whole without this we're just creatures living in a pitiful cage is Eren. That's Eren. So then you have to wonder when this is spouted, is this Grisha speaking through Eren, or is this just Eren's attitude that he's learned from Grisha all this time? You have to wonder because it's very reminiscent of everything that Eren says, and you wonder if Eren's picked this up from his father through spending time with him, or whether when he says that after having consumed Grisha, that those words come out. We know that he had those thoughts prior to consuming Grisha, but still, it's so scary to see the family resemblance sometimes between them. Research concerning the unique power of subjects of Ymir to become titans. A field of study since the era of the Aldeian Empire, it encompasses not only the biology of titans themselves, but also the ideologies of Aldeians who possess the power and how to deal with them. Though researched extensively over many years, the truth of Titans still remains a mystery. He told him because he trusts him It's probably the only adult in his life that he does trust.
草葉さん、キャッチボールしてくれてありがとう。巨人になっても時々思い出すからね。
I feel like he's gonna do something to try and protect
立ちなさい。
Zeke.
もうこれし
To
かない。
protect
自ら
himself.
マーレ当局に告発することでマーレに忠誠を示せば。
そんな、できないよ。
ジーク、君は両親からひどいことをされた。勝手に見放し、ちっとも君のことを気にかけなかった。君を愛さなかった。ジーク。
The only adult
Kimi wa
that he
waruku nai.
trusted and felt like they cared for
君
him
は賢くていい子だ。
influences him to report them.
の
So it wasn't off his own back that he did it. It's just that the adult
もう年寄りにはきつ
that he
いから。
trusted most in this
ほら
world
まだそんな年
influenced him to.
草葉さん、
Which you can get because he cares for Zeke a lot and he just wants to protect him, doesn't want him to become a Titan because of his parents, because of what his parents have done. He would be punished for their sin, for their crime, which isn't deserving. He didn't ask for this. He didn't choose to be born into that family. He didn't choose to be subjected to being nothing more than a weapon for his family's ideals. So I can completely understand where he's coming from in terms of the only chance that you have to not be turned into a Titan and to not be punished for their crime is to turn them in and prove your loyalty to Marley. And as a result, you'll be allowed to remain a candidate and most likely will end up becoming a warrior, because how could they ever doubt a child who's turned in their parents for the sake of Marley? They would never doubt him for 1 second. So of course they're going to allow him to become a warrior, because they're like, look at this loyalty to our country, to us. We could use that loyalty. Hence why it's such a shock when he does betray them, because he's also the same kid that turned his parents in for Marley. It's just so sad though. It's just so sad because Zeke turned his parents in because he felt like they didn't love him, that they didn't care for him. And I mean, Grisha never treated him like a son. Grisha treated him as a weapon. So Grisha kind of deserved it. His mum, again, she does seem to care for him, but she does also seem to pick the restorationists over her own child. And I guess people will argue that you will pick the greater good for the Aldean people over your own family, but at the same time, that ideology is still hinged on the idea of using Zeke, of manipulating Zeke into becoming a weapon, you know? So it's like, yes, you're willing to sacrifice everything, but even your son, your own son, it's not something I can fully abide with or fully agree with. It's something that makes me feel like they don't deserve to be parents, because they couldn't love their son for who he was. They only loved him for what he could eventually become. And that's just heart-wrenching, because Zeke deserved to be loved and treated with respect, and to be a child and not be just a weapon, just a means to an end. He never got that chance with his parents, but he did get that chance with him. I can't say his last name, so I keep referring to him as him, so I do apologize. I'm just gonna butcher it. I don't know how to say it, but he treated him like a child. He gave him the opportunity to enjoy himself, to have time that wasn't just built on being a weapon, on becoming a warrior for the sake of his parents' ambitions. And he even said to them, please stop doing this, it's dangerous. And they refused to listen to him. Consequence of their own actions, in a sense. I can understand why Zeke didn't want to do it, but I can also understand why he was influenced too, because the one person that treated him as a person is trying to protect him. And the only way to protect him is to report his parents, and as a consequence also protect his grandparents, who were treating him like a child, or at least his grandma was. So you get it, it's just heart-wrenching nonetheless. But Grisha deserved it. I'll die on that hill. Grisha's not a good person.
継承の任期を終える頃だ。
そうだね。
年寄りにもなれなかったが、研究に打ち込めたことに後悔はない。始祖の巨人がユミルのためにもたらした様々な影響について。
ああ、記憶を操作するとかいうあれ？
記憶どころじゃない。体の構造も変えてしまうことができるんだ。
What?
600年ほど前、世界の人口が激減するほどの疫病が猛威を振るった時代があった。ある日を境にエルディア帝国からその病は消滅した。
Okay,
当時
interesting.
の王が始祖の巨人の力でユミルの民の体の設計図を書き換えたんだよ。
朝、
どうしてまた悪魔を生んだ？
始祖の巨人ならユミルの民が子供を産めなくす
I
る
mean,
ことができるの
technically.
かな。もしこれ以上ユミルの民が生まれてこなければ、100年後にはこの世から巨人は消滅している。何よりそもそも僕らは生まれてこなければ苦しまなくてよかったんだ。
He's so shocked by that.
草葉さん、
話してなかったけど、私には家族がいたんだ。妻はマーレ人だったんだ。しかしいつまでも騙し通せるわけもなく、私がエルディア人だと知った妻は自分と息子の喉を裂いて死んだ。巨人の研究に没頭し、君と出会いキャッチボ
And he
ールを
probably
して
saw Zeke like a son.
楽しかった。亡き息子を君に求め、巨人の力で自分の罪から逃れようとした。
獣の巨人は俺が継承する。マーレのためじゃない。始祖奪還計画を成功させ、世界を救ってみせるよ。世界の人々を巨人の恐怖から解き放ち、エルディア人を苦しみから解放するんだ。
By freedom from suffering, does he
これ
mean
は
by
マーレに伝えていない情報
preventing
な
them
んだ
from being able to have kids, or just
線の
freeing
ち
them
ぎれ
in
を打ち破
general?
る方法だ。図らずともジーク、それは君だからこそ可能になる。
So he knew.
王家の血を引く巨人であれば、始祖の巨人の継承者と接触することにより、その能力を引き出すことができるはずだ。
Which we
し
know.
かし、力を使えるのは君じゃない。決定権は始祖の保有者に委ねられる。いわば、君の役割は鍵だ。誰か信頼できる者に始祖を
His
託せ
brother.
ば、私はいつでも見守っているからな。ジーク。
見つけてみせるよ、父さん。
He saw him as his
エレ
dad.
ン・イエーガーだと。
はい。エレンは始祖の巨人の保有者です。
そのエレンから父親の話を何か聞いたか？
確か今は行方不明で医者をやってたと聞きました。
That's when he realized Saren's his
な
brother.
んてことだ。あの父親は生きていた。エレン、俺たちは被害者だ。お前はあの父親に洗脳されている。いつか必ず救い出してやるからな。
Yeah. I said that back in series 3 that he recognized that they were kindred
少し
spirits.
父親と似てきたようだ。俺の考えはイエレナから聞いた通り、エルディア人安楽死計画に賛同してくれるのか。
4年前、あることをきっかけに親父の記憶が開いた。親父が壁の王家一家を皆殺しにした時の記憶。
Euthanization, so that's to get
まだ
rid
小さな
of
子
the
供たちを虫
audience
みたいに潰して回った。
in general, like to get rid of them from having children so that eventually they die out,
その子たちが生きていれ
right?
ば始祖の巨人は王家の手に渡り、子供たちの死が俺たちを生かした。
そうか。父親は正しかった。そう思ったのか。
いいや、親父は間違っている。そして、その親父に育てられた俺も間違いだった。この世に生まれないこと、これ以上の救済はない。
That's a
俺はやる。
grand departure
俺の手で
from his
巨人が支
previous
配した2000年の歴史に
ideology
ケリをつける。その日を迎えるまで進み続ける。そうだろう、兄さん。
ああ、その通りだ。やろう。固い握手でも交わしたいところだが、まあ、今俺たちが接触するのはまずいよな。代わりにこれを受け取ってくれ。エレン、必ずみんなを救ってあげよ
So the plan isn't to save the audience, but to save the rest of the world by getting rid of the audience.
お前はこれから臭え巨
Let
人の
them
口の
die
中で
out.
自分の体が咀嚼される音を聞きながら死ぬわけだが、お前にしちゃ随分と安らかな死に方だろう。奪った仲間たちの命に比べてみれば。
奪ってない。救ってやったんだ。
In his mind, he's
そ
putting
いつ
them
ら
out
か
of
ら
their
生まれ
misery.
てくる命を、この残酷な世界から。クソ坊さん、見ててくれよ
Oh God. Levi, get out of there. Huh? Is Levi okay? Is Levi dead? What the fuck, man? Oh my God. Well, we don't know until the next episode, and that's if the next episode even shows it. I don't know how to feel about this. This is insane. So there's two different ideologies that we're seeing here. The ideology that Grisha has, that they need to free all Aldeans from being oppressed by reclaiming the Aldean Empire, by taking back what was once theirs, to now this idea of the Aldean euthanization, where you prevent them from having further children by using the founding titans that would change the way in which the bodies of the subjects of Ymir were built, preventing them from having children, because if their body makeup can be changed to cure them from plague and disease, then it could be done to prevent them from having children. So it's gone from we all deserve to be born into this world, that we all deserve to live in this world, to now we should never have been born and we shouldn't exist, and therefore we should just erase ourselves and take ourselves out. But how is that any different to what Karl Fritz was intending? Karl Fritz was intending to allow Marley to just wipe them out from within the walls, to allow them to be erased and destroyed. So what difference does the Aldean euthanization hold? Truly, it doesn't really change much other than preventing subjects of Ymir from having babies. It still fundamentally doesn't really change what Karl Fritz's idea was, which is that they should all just be wiped out to atone for the sins of the past. And in a way, that's what Zeke is believing too. Zeke believes that they don't deserve to be born, and that if they weren't born, then the rest of the world could live in peace and harmony, that they are the ones that have caused discontent and fracture, and therefore by removing themselves from the picture, they should just be allowed to die out, because then it would erase Titans altogether. But if we're being truthful here, that shouldn't fundamentally be the case, and it also isn't needed, because if you think about it logically, if you remove the intelligent titans, lock the intelligent titans behind a vow so that they can never be transferred to the subjects of Ymir, then there is no reason for any citizen to become a pure titan and also destroy all the serum. They can only become a titan through the serum itself. So if you take the serum out the picture and you take the intelligent titans out the picture, then they will never become titans. They're just as ordinary as everybody else. Yes, there's still the potentiality of it, but they're still just as ordinary as everyone else. I get that in their minds, the rest of the world won't trust us because of the fact that we could become pure titans at any point. So why would they ever trust us? Why would they ever allow us to move on and be a part of this world if we are also the reason why so many of them has suffered? But at the same time, why should the future generations also be made to suffer and atone for the sins of the past, for a history that they are unaware of, that they were not alive to witness, and for something that isn't their fault? Why should they be punished? Why should they not be allowed to have children? Why should they be expected to just die out? Why can't the audience continue to live in peace? I don't know if Eren buys into this because Eren's so hell bent on this idea of because I was born into this world and the importance of his place in this world because he was born, he's special for merely being born. Why do I feel like he's appeasing Zeke to get his own way? Because his own way isn't to erase the Aldean people, but to free the Aldean people. Erasing them in the end isn't freeing them. You're just condemning them to inevitably be wiped out. It's ethnic cleansing. You're essentially wanting to ethnically cleanse your own people. And it feels very much like Zeke is aligning with the whole idea of his granddad, which is that we have to atone for the sins of the past. And the only way to atone for the sins of the past is to ensure that we are never born in the first place, that we prevent future subjects of Ymir from being born, that we cut the ties and just allow ourselves as a race to die out and end the tyrannical rule of the Titans for the past God knows how long of time. But Eren is so hell-bent on this idea of because we were born, we are special, that I don't think Eren buys into this Aldean euthanization. I think he's appeasing Zeke to get his own way, which is to trigger the rumbling, because Zeke won't agree to it if he feels that Eren isn't going to euthanize the Aldean population. I feel like Zeke would refuse to participate if that wasn't agreed to. So to me, Eren is manipulating Zeke, not the other way around. I think Eren is saying what needs to be said because he fundamentally still believes that the audience deserve to be free of oppression and to be allowed to live equally to the rest of humanity, that they deserve a place in this world because they are special for merely being born into this world. I could be proven wrong. I just don't feel like Eren would change his mind fundamentally that quickly. I think Eren is manipulating Zeke for his own agenda because everyone's of the mindset that Zeke is manipulating Eren, that Eren has been coerced by Zeke, when in fact it's possibly the other way around. Most possibly. But it also makes sense as to why Zeke doesn't really care about how many people have suffered because of him, because in his mind, he sees it as having saved them from the future suffering. He's freed them from this cruel world. They no longer have to suffer as subjects of Ymir. In his mind, he's freed them, but he hasn't freed them because he's cut their lives short and prevented them from having a life, from having a future. As he said to Levi, he said, I've saved them and their future generations by preventing them from essentially having kids because I wiped them out. They're gone. They don't have to suffer the fate of this cruel world. He says, if Aldeans hadn't been born, this city, these people wouldn't have to die in this plan of ours. There's no greater salvation than never being born in this world. I'll do it. I'll put an end to 2,000 years of Titan domination. I don't buy that Eren truly believes that because Eren has always been so hell-bent on this idea of because I was born into this world. I don't see his perspective fundamentally shifting that drastically in such a short space of time. I think in his mind, everyone deserves to be free. Everyone deserves to be allowed to live equally. And I think he's just appeasing Zeke. Because Zeke was like, oh, so you agree with father? And he's like, no. Because if he did agree with Grisha, Zeke's not going to work with him because it has to be someone that he fundamentally trusts. That's what drummed into him. You have to trust the person that you're going to make contact with to unlock that ability. Eren knows that Zeke has to trust him. So he's going to say whatever he can to make sure that Zeke trusts him. I don't think Eren believes in the Aldean euthanization. I believe Zeke does. I don't believe Eren does. I think Eren knows that Zeke won't agree to it unless he believes that him and Eren are on the same side because he has to fundamentally trust the person he's unlocking the abilities in. This was just such a heart-wrenching episode. Just seeing the way that Grisha mistreated Zeke. We suspected that Grisha wasn't particularly kind to Zeke, that he didn't see him as a son. He admits to himself that one of his sins is not having treated him like a son. And he didn't. He treated him like a weapon, as something to be used, a tool for his own end rather than a child rather than someone who deserved to be loved and respected and spent time with beyond studying, beyond being forced to become a warrior for your own agenda. This poor boy has done nothing but suffer because of his family's ambitions, because of Dina and Grisha's idea that if their son becomes a warrior, they can reclaim the founding titan and they can retake what was once theirs and free all of the Eldian people so that they no longer have to live under oppression. Again, it's the conflicting ideologies. It's the same way that some of the Jaegerists believe that they need to retake land that was once theirs to rebuild the empire, and others within the Jaegerist movement don't agree with that. They just want to protect paradise. They just want paradise to be free, and they want the other audience to be free and no longer mistreated and abused. So you're already seeing a conflict of ideologies in that movement. We're now seeing a conflict of ideologies between what the restorationists were and what they are now. In the past, they were like the Jaegerists. They wanted to take back what was once theirs and end oppression, end suffering, and allow the Eldian people to live freely. Now we're seeing under Zeke, they're now focused on the Eldian euthanization, which is prevent them from having children and they'll die out naturally within 100 years. And no one will have to suffer anymore because the world will be free of the Titans. And likewise, the Eldian people will no longer have to be mistreated and abused any further because they'll be gone. But it's still sanctioning the mistreatment of Eldian people for the next 100 years until they die out, you know? That doesn't free them from the oppression that they're currently dealing with. It doesn't free them from the situation that they're in. I also feel like it aligns far too closely with this whole idea of atoning for the sins of the past and Carl Fritz's idea of wiping them out, of just allowing them to be erased from this world because that's the only way they can atone for their history. It's too close to what we've already seen for me to believe that Aaron's like, yes, this is the solution. This is the idea. He's already said that he hates people that are willing to live like slaves, that are willing to be controlled. So why would he sanction this idea of Aldians being mistreated and abused for the next 100 years until they die out? I don't think he would side with this idea of audience just being erased. I don't think that that's Aaron's motivation. I think Aaron's ultimate goal is to save humanity as a whole, is to allow the audience to live in peace and freely, but also to live alongside other people too, without discrimination, without abuse. How that's going to be achieved, I don't know. Again, I have said this a few times that the only way this is achievable is if you wiped out half the population and started from scratch, which is a very extreme measure, but that seems more in line with what Aaron believes as beneficial than the Aldian euthanization project. I believe that Aaron would rather wipe out half of humanity and start again and allow them to come together and work together to build a better society than agreeing with this idea that we should forcibly sterilize through changing the very mechanics of how the body works in subjects of emia and allow them to just die out in 100 years' time. I feel Aaron's not about that life. I don't think Aaron would agree with that. All Zeke ever wanted was for his dad to love him, and Grisha couldn't even do that. Grisha couldn't even be there for his son. And if his memories live on in Aaron, they fuel and motivate Aaron. But how much of that is fueled by Grisha and how much of that is fueled by the memories he's already received from Ymir? This is the thing. Everything seems very fated to happen. Everything seems very planned out in advance. And that's why it's so hard to determine how far back does this go? Is this all originating from 2,000 years ago and everyone's being forced to play their role in this in order to ensure that Aaron is able to free humanity? Or do they all have an element of free will as well that kind of puts a spanner in the works in terms of how the plan goes because they also have the ability to decide whether they're going to do it or not, and then that can kind of throw things off as they go along. I don't know. Again, I still believe that Aaron's being motivated and driven by an external force, which is Emir. And to some extent, Grisha's memories also probably fuel him. But I still think he has an element of free will, because in terms of the memories, I still think he's going against what the memories are showing. That he's been shown what's going to happen in the future and he's acting against that. So that in itself would be an element of free will. Yes, the memories influence him to revolt against it, but that's the perspective I'm going with. Because again, I don't believe that Eren sides with this whole idea of the Aldean euthanization project. I don't. I think personally he would be more for erasing half of humanity and working it out that way than just consigning the Aldean people to being wiped out in 100 years. Because again, it's just replicating Carl Fritz's vow. They're essentially just consigning themselves with Carl Fritz's vow. The reason he opposed the idea of war is because he never wanted to enact that type of suffering and cruelty on humanity again, but at the same time would allow the audience to be wiped out if Marley saw fit to do so. So they're aligning themselves with that, which I don't think Eren would side with. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think Eren's manipulating Zeke for his own agenda, his own purpose, and Zeke is buying into it because Zeke thinks that he can trust Eren because they're brothers, because they've both been, in his words, brainwashed by Grisha, that Eren's a victim too, without realizing that as much as Grisha has forced Eren to take this Titan without his consent, without his say in this, he's not the same victim as what Zeke was. Zeke's childhood was a lot harder, a lot harsher. Zeke wasn't treated as a son, was treated as a weapon, as a tool. Eren had loving parents. Eren was cared for. Eren's father was quite active in his life. We've seen that Grisha was active in his life and also actively cared for Eren. As much as his treatment of Zeke was absolutely heinous and deplorable, he does seem to have learned from it somewhat and atoned for it through his treatment of Eren. Where I see Eren somewhat as a victim is that all of this is somewhat thrust upon him without his say-so. He doesn't have a choice. It's all kind of forced onto him by Grisha, and whether that will come out that it's all been designed and planned that way and Grisha's just following through the motions, I don't know. But either way, putting that type of pressure on a young boy like Eren is, again, just poor parenting. But then you have to kind of question again, could that have been influenced by external forces that maybe Grisha never intended to give the Titans to Eren, but has been influenced to do so by an external force? Because if he's atoned for how he treated Zeke, it wouldn't make sense to then force Eren to then replicate that by taking on the burden of the Attack Titan and the Founding Titan in order to enact Grisha's own goals and ambitions, which is to retake the continent for the freedom and benefit of the Aldean people by taking back what was once theirs and recreating the empire. If he's learned from his mistakes with Zeke, it doesn't make sense that he would then force that onto Eren, which is now making me start to think, could he have been influenced to pass that on to Eren? And is that to do with at the end of series 3 when the owl is saying, to protect Mikasa and Armin, and we're all like, what the fuck? Like, where's that come from? That's so weird. It's so out of character. Could this be memories from the future coming back into the past where Grisha's being influenced to pass these abilities to Eren because Eren wants to use these abilities to protect his friends? Because the only person that would know about Mikasa and Armin would be Eren. So has Eren somehow in the future found a way to transmit these memories back into the past to Owl as the Attack Titan prior to these abilities being given to Grisha? So that then when Grisha takes it, Grisha has the memories also from the future, which then influences his decision to pass on the attack titan and the founding titan to Eren. Could he have been influenced then to take the founding titan by memories from the future? That he's taken it, consumed it, given it to Eren because future Eren wants that to happen. Because we know that memories from the past can go to the present. We're still not sure if memories from the future can go back to the present. But if they can, could Eren in the future be influencing all of this to ensure that the future that he's currently existing in happens? That he's making sure that everything is passed down to him so that he can enact what needs to be done to ensure that the future he's living in is the one that exists and not the one that he was shown back in series 1, episode 1. It could be. The timeline in this seems wonky, and I don't do well with time travel and things like that. Like, it kind of confuses me, but I'm thinking if memories from the past can be sent to the present, then memories from the future can possibly sent back to the present, and that potentially Eren could have sent memories backwards in time, and then that could go to the attack titan, who was the owl at the time, which would then make sense as to why he knew who Mikasa and Armin were. And therefore, those memories from the future would have been passed down to Grisha, and Grisha would have been influenced to then make sure that Eren receives the attack titan and the founding titan, so that everything plays out in the following trajectory. So perhaps Grisha's become puppeteered by future Eren to ensure that Eren receives the abilities to ensure that the rumbling can happen and that humanity can be freed, and to prevent the Aldean euthanization project that Zeke wants to enact. I thought that Zeke had had memories and that's why Zeke turned his parents in, but I was not correct on that. He was influenced by a paternal figure that has essentially told him, in order to protect yourselves, you need to turn your parents in because it's the only way to stop yourself from becoming a titan. You shouldn't be punished for the sins of your parents, which is just, again, symbolic of the story in general. None of the audience that are currently existing should be punished for the sins of their ancestors, from the sins of those that came before. It's almost as if they understand the message and then forget the message, because essentially the Aldean euthanization project is still punishing the audience for the sins of the past, for a sin they were not alive to witness and participate in. So you're still enacting that punishment upon them. So having a paternal figure say, oh, the only way in which to protect yourself is to condemn your parents, because then you're not punished for their sin, but at the same time is supporting him in the idea of punishing all subjects of Emia by preventing them from having children and eventually dying out in 100 years. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's like they get close to the point and then they miss the point. It's as if they get very close to understanding, hey, we shouldn't be punished for the sins of the past because we weren't actually alive when that happened and it's cruel and unnecessary. But then again, advocating for punishment along the idea of atoning for the sins of the past. But again, that could come down to the rhetoric and the brainwashing and believing that they deserve to suffer, that it's right for them to suffer because of what they've caused the Malian people and also the other people on the continent, the other countries that have also suffered because of the audience. But again, I just don't see Eren buying into this. It's just so tragic, though, to see Zeke never get the life that he felt he deserved, that he's always been puppeteered, he's always been a weapon, he's always been used, and the one person that treats him like a child, that treats him like he's someone of worth, is the very person that he has to consume in order to become the Beast Titan. And it's just incredibly sad that they didn't get to have their happy ending. He saw him as the father he never had, and he likewise saw him as the son that never got to be because his wife killed herself and her son because of the shame of having married an Aldean without knowing and having a child that is mixed between Marleyan and Aldean, and the trauma that must have caused him, because again, he had to be honest, he couldn't live this lie, but that just reinforced to him that his existence causes unnecessary suffering, and therefore the world would be a better place if the audience were gone completely. If he never existed, she would never have suffered. And likewise, Zeke has the same mentality that if the audience don't exist, then no one else has to suffer. The rest of humanity can live in peace and harmony, which we know isn't true because the Malians are having wars with everybody. With or without the Titans, probably still would be having wars. It's not just the audience that are the reason for discontentment in this world. It's human greed is what causes friction the majority of the time in the show, especially because Marley is attacking Paradise not solely because of atoning for the sins of the past. That's partly the reason, but the other part of the reason is there's vital resources underneath Paradise that they want to get access to. So again, it comes down to human greed. Even with the audience completely removed from society, that doesn't mean that humanity is going to live in peace and harmony. Of course it doesn't. We've already been having wars amongst each other, and yes, Marley have been using the audience as weapons, but remove the audience from the picture, they would still be having those wars with each other. They're seeing the audience as the root of all evil, as the root of discontentment in this world, without looking at the bigger picture, that this discontentment would still exist because of innate greed. I believe it was either Erwin or Pixies that talked about how humanity will continue to fight each other until the last one is dead. It's just an innate part of humanity. So even with the audience gone, that's going to happen. That's going to continue. So I think this whole idea of erasing the audience and peace will be established is just incorrect. It's not going to happen. But again, I just don't think that Eren is in on this. I think Eren's using Zeke to get his own way, which is to trigger the rumbling and to wipe out humanity, or at least some of humanity, in order to rebuild, reestablish humanity from the ground up. That's what I think Eren's goal is here. I think Zeke does believe this idea that if we just prevent the audience from having kids and they eventually die out, then everything will be solved. I don't think Eren agrees with that. I don't think Eren's going to side with that. I think he's manipulating Zeke. Just like everyone thought Zeke was manipulating Eren, I actually think it's the opposite. I think Eren's manipulating Zeke. It's just tragic. This whole situation where Zeke didn't get to live happily, felt that he had no choice but to turn his parents in because they didn't listen to him, because he asked them to stop doing this because it was going to get them in trouble. It was going to cause danger to him and his family. And they didn't listen to him because in their mind, sacrificing their lives and the life of their son for the Odeon Empire is much more important than Zeke's wishes and to exist as a family, because it's too important. There's too much at stake by not pursuing their inevitable goal. And as a consequence, Zeke never got to be a kid. Zeke had to turn them in to protect himself. And he was just a kid. I feel like we're too harsh on him, judging him for that. He was just a kid. And I knew there had to be a deeper reason behind it. I knew it wasn't as simple as he did this out of loyalty for Marley. He did this because he was influenced by a paternal figure, that it was the best decision he needed to make because they didn't love him and that they didn't actually treat him as a child and that they were cruel to him. It was kind of a wake-up call for Zeke of, oh, yeah, they are actually horrible to me and I deserve better. And why should I be punished for my parents' decision to be part of the restorationists? That's not fair. I mean, it's kind of a consequence of their actions, but at the same time, I can also sympathize as to why Grisha and Dina become restorationists, because they're sick of the suffering. They're sick of being forced to live within walls, of being mistreated and abused and spat on and treated as if they're nothing, as if their lives are nothing. I get why they joined, and I support freedom fighters and I support the idea of self-defense and standing up against your oppressors. But again, at the same time, I can also empathize with Zeke and why Zeke felt that he needed to protect himself, why he needed to turn his parents in, and he tried to get them to stop and they wouldn't stop. But this episode was just heart-wrenching and tragic, and I couldn't stop crying. I was like 6 minutes in and bawling my eyes out, but what a phenomenal episode. And I cannot wait to see what happens in episode 16, because He's blown himself up. I don't know what's happened to Levi. I don't know if Levi's surviving that, but I don't think they could kill Levi that easily. I think if Levi dies this season, it's going to be much more epic than being blown up in the back of a car. I think he's going to survive, but possibly be very injured and maybe out of the picture for a couple of episodes, but I don't think he's dead. As to what's going to happen to Zeke, I don't know, because I imagine that's going to severely injure him even further. Yes, he will recover because he has Titan blood, but at the same time, he's going to still be incapacitated. But maybe Levi will also be incapacitated, which will give him chance to heal up enough to make a run for it and find Eren. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if that would be like a death sentence for Zeke, but there's been times where I thought something was a death sentence for someone with Titan blood and it wasn't a death sentence, so who knows, truly. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below to help boost this video into the algorithm. And until next episode, bye!